You're sending me lots of pictures of your dinner tonight because a wag, a footballer's wife, married to a Man City star, has said that British food is not great. In fact, she was even less polite than that. So you've been sending me pictures of your dinner. We'll rate your plate in just a few minutes and actually later in the show as well, because we're getting hundreds in. And let me tell you, you're a well-fed bunch. But in response to my Big Opinion monologue, lots of emails coming in on that one. No to COVID nonsense says, let's have a look, Proton. You must be joking, Mark. Stop even wasting time promoting it. It's absurd by now. Linda says, Mark, the single reason for every restriction was to protect the hospitals, nothing else. Those MPs are terrified that the hospitals will be unable to cope. Lynn, it is a good point, and it's an argument that's hard to argue with. 100% right, I'm with you all the way, says Peter. The emails are coming in thick and fast. Do keep them coming. Derek says, on vaccines, Mark, great show as usual. I won't be having my 4th booster, and I'm 74. My natural immune system has been completely compromised by this rubbish injected into me. Well, Derek, I'm so sorry to hear that you're not feeling 100%, but I'm sure you will prevail with that excellent 74-year-old body of yours. And last but not least at this stage, Glenda says, no, no, no to COVID restrictions. I didn't wear a mask last time. No one should have to breathe in the air that they have exhaled. It is unhealthy. Glenda, I do wish that you were the chief medical officer of this country. I couldn't agree more. Look, lots more to get through, but it's time now for this. Yes, it's time for the big question in which we tackle a major news story of the day. Tonight, Sarah Alfawi, a wag married to the Man City player Ilkay Gundogan, has complaints about the food in this country, and particularly the standards of restaurants in Manchester, saying nothing's fresh and it's all cooked from frozen. So is British food something to be celebrated or a source of national shame? Put bluntly, tonight's big question, is British food crap? To debate this, I'm delighted to welcome restaurant critic Andy Hayler and award-winning comedian and star of Mrs. Doubtfire, Scott Capurro, who of course is one of the stars of Headliners as well, and the UK comedy circuit. Great to have both of you with me. Scott, I'll come to you in just a moment, once you've finished that rather big sausage of yours. But Andy, British food, is it crap?
No. I think it's my summary. I mean, I've eaten very widely around the world in a very large number of countries, and there are good and bad restaurants everywhere, of course. But generally speaking, I think the food in Britain might have been a bit less than great in the 60s and 70s, in particular when I grew up. But I think for the last sort of 20, 30 or so years, it's been, getting steadily sort of better. And, of course, there are other great places like, France, Japan in particular would be the obvious sort of, nations of cuisine. But I think the restaurants in England and particularly London where I live, I think are actually in pretty good shape on a global basis.
And is there a difference, Andy, between the restaurant scene and how we eat at home? I mean, what about the national dishes that we have? British cuisine generally. Does it punch its weight globally?
Well, of course, it depends what you eat. But I mean, there's nothing inherently wrong about sort of British cuisine. I mean, if you think about where we live, we're an island, so we have some terrific sort of seafood. You have a picture there of fish and chips on the screen. But we have absolutely fine sort of lovely fish around the shores of the UK, from turbot, sea bass, Dover sole, langoustines, and so on, just as good as anywhere, really. So I don't think there's any inherent reason why British cuisine should be viewed in any worse way than any other, really.
Scott Capurro, you've made quite a lot of jokes about British cuisine over the years in your award-winning stand-up act. So give it both barrels. Tell us what you think about British food.
Well, I'm not great at holding a camera. That's obvious. There you go. But I love crisps. I think crisps, the vinegar crisps are great. I think The cheddar cheese crisps are good. What else do you have? I like salt. Is a nice seasoning.
Oh dear.
I'm not thinking of much. I think
Gravy?
bacon is overrated. I'm a bit nervous about fried food, and it seems as though there's a lot of lovely food in the UK, but when I go to a dinner party, a lot of my friends just fry it, and it seems to lose its flavor to me. So I like a bit more subtle cooking, like Brazilian food I prefer. But, I live here. I deal with it every day. Every day I deal with it. It's really, it can be hard to find fresh vegetables in December, January, but that's true of a lot of places, I think.
That's probably true. But, Scott, what about those British classics like roast beef and Yorkshire pudding, toad in the hole? What about spotted dick? You can't tell me you've never had spotted dick.
It's my favorite drag name. I think the problem is that the food, I think nowadays the food seems old-fashioned to most people under the age of 40 because they want lots of greens and they want, unhomogenized raw milk from farms, and they want locally sourced food, and they want food with flavor. They're quite picky. And, they don't want food from a vending machine, which is what I had to live on the road for the last 30 years. So I'm not bitter about it. Thank God I have a 31-inch waist. It's been a struggle, Mark, but I've maintained it, as you know. So I think people's tastes have changed. They have taste now. They want a bit of flavor in their food, and they're not willing to settle for something, at a bagel shop at 2 a.m. any longer. I think they want something a bit more substantial that's healthy.
Well, definitely. Look, Andy, Scott arrived in the UK in the late 90s. Don't consider him an American now. He's an honorary Brit, and we're all the better for that. Bottom line is that the way we eat has improved drastically in the last couple of decades, hasn't it? We've watched these cooking shows in which we've learned more about global cuisine. Gordon Ramsay, Nigella Lawson, Jamie Oliver, Delia Smith. We've learned from the best, haven't we? And we do have some of the best ingredients in the world. Our meat is world class. Scottish Aberdeen Angus beef, British dairy, West Country cheese, Suffolk potatoes. The list goes on.
I mean, there's some fantastic cuisine in Britain, and there's some great ingredients in Britain. So, as you say, we've got terrific meat. You've got fantastic venison. You've got some very, very good beef, some lovely, Welsh lamb. You've got amazing seafood. Vegetables are okay, But to answer your particular point earlier, I mean, if you want to eat sort of very fashionable, food, or you want to eat, a lot of vegan, vegetarian food, I mean, somewhere like, I don't know, Gautier in Soho, is a pure vegan restaurant now, headed by a previously Michelin-starred chef. It does absolutely fantastic, glorious food that's purely vegan. So you can absolutely eat, very, very high grade, vegan food if that's what you want to eat in London. And frankly, probably more easily than you can in Paris or a lot of other cities. So I think, of course, you can eat badly everywhere, right? I mean, but, as I say, have someone who's eaten in every 3-star Michelin restaurant in the world, I can assure you that the standard of food in London is certainly, of a very high level, relative to a great many countries. It may not be the absolute best, compared to Tokyo or Paris, but but in terms of variety, London is amazing. I mean, we have.
Well, you
we
keep
have
saying that, and
fantastic.
I hear it. I hear it from you, and I think the Tokyo food is a bit pungent, actually, for my taste. The fish tastes a bit fresh a bit too fresh out of the sea. But what I think people have a problem with here, and what they might be complaining about, you go to a restaurant and you cough up 100 quid, and you can hear the microwave door dinging in the kitchen, and it's true. It costs a lot of money to have a decent meal in London and in the UK. Edinburgh is extremely expensive now. You say vegan. I mean, I want real food. I want food I want a creature on my plate, and I want that creature as fresh. I don't want gravy that's been, heated up the day before. You know what I mean? I mean, people, it's very pricey, and people, I think they want what they ordered on the menu, not something they could have bought at Sainsbury's in the frozen section and taken home and cooked themselves in 20 minutes, which is what they're getting a lot of in restaurants in London. They are.
I mean, of course, there are those kind of things. But for example, if you want some great cheap, good value food in London. So go to someone like Diwana Belpuri in Drummond Street near Euston, and you will struggle to spend £15 for some absolutely fantastic, South Indian snacks. They're absolutely glorious, marvelously tasty, whatever. You would struggle to spend £15 a head. Of course, you can find terrible restaurants everywhere. You can find bad restaurants in New York. You can find bad restaurants in Los Angeles. But there are many, many, many great examples. You will talk about Edinburgh, and you talk about, everything's fried, whatever. Well, actually, go to someone like the Scran and Scally in Edinburgh, a pub which does fantastic fresh scallops, live langoustines. This is a pub, right? But you get amazing sort of scampi. You get tremendous, all kinds of different dishes that are superb. So I think, honestly, you're just reaching in the wrong places.
Scott, very briefly.
You're inspiring me. You are.
The food, you must admit, Scott, you are from San Francisco in California. The food in America is far worse than here in the UK.
No, the food's fantastic in the U.S. And part of the reason is the abundance of it. I mean, it's just everywhere. And also, Mark, you must know.
McDonald's, In-N-Out.
Well, there's fast food restaurants here as well. But if you go to a restaurant, you get, something decent. And I think what you're thinking, the problem is in the U.S. is it takes a lot of food to feed people who are running the world. They're very hungry. And they're blowing up bridges, and they're, defending Putin. So I think the problem is they're eating a lot, because they want to keep their brains alive. Whereas, in a hamlet like Britain, you're right. You can get by in a sandwich near Euston or chips like that. That's fine. A bit of popcorn, you can survive. But I think when you want a real meal and you don't have to spend 200 quid, it would be great to know where that restaurant exists in, say, Bethnal Green, where I live. Have you got anything over here in East London?
Absolutely. Okay. Bethnal Green. Why don't you go to Da Terra, terrific sort of restaurant there. Or if you want something at the much, much sort of cheaper end, you can go, there's some terrific Indian restaurants around Whitechapel, like the Lahore Kebab House, which are literally 15, 20 quid. I mean, I've been a lot of times to San Francisco, by the way, at least 20 times, and I'm very familiar with the food scene there. And there's some lovely food there. You're absolutely right. I mean, some places like Atelier Crème, there's places like Quince and many, many others, which are absolutely lovely. And you get, terrific food there. But so you do in London, if you know where to look. Okay. And I just wonder whether, you've maybe not been very fortunate in the places that you've chosen, I think.
Andy and Scott, before you go, because I know, Scott, you've got to run off to do your live show, massive sold-out gig tonight. But I'm going to ask you to rate the plate of some of my wonderful viewers. Edward, this is his dinner. Oh, Darren, sorry, we'll start with Darren. This is Darren, and he sent us his barbecue meal. Can I get an out of 10 for Darren's meat? How about you, Scott? What do you think of Darren's rather juicy joints?
It's looking satisfying and plump. I will give it, if there's a salad bowl on the right, out of the photo, I will give it a 7.
All right, this is the United Kingdom. We don't do salad, Scott. You should know that by now. Andy, out of 10 for that plate?
It looks perfectly pleasant. Maybe a 5. I mean, that's fine.
Blimey, hard to please. Then again, he is a restaurant critic. I would take that, Darren. Edward has got his pork crackling out. Let's take a look at this with an array of vegetables. Right, now listen, that's surely a Michelin star, isn't it, Andy?
Oh, my God.
Well, I think the broccoli looks okay. Yeah. I think the meat looks sadly a bit over, I'm afraid. So I might have to make that a little bit lower.
Okay, Scott.
That would wreck the night for me. That I'd walk out. I'd have to leave. I'm sorry.
All right, the passion killer. Mary has sent in her Saturday night meal: steak and chips, classic, with a bit of sweet corn. Scott.
The tomatoes and the chips are inflammatory. I'd stick with the steak. Take the steak knife, and that's about. I don't know what that green stuff is. I'll give it a 3.
Okay, how about an out of 10 from you?
I have to say, I'm warming to Scott about every moment of this conversation, actually. So it's hard to tell until you cut through the meat, what it's actually like. But the chips look like they're thin and grim, and it's not particularly appealing, I have to say.
Caroline's gone for a late breakfast. That makes her a legend in my book.
Right. Yeah, I give it a -1. That's the triple bypass breakfast. She's not gonna wake up. She's going to be a chalk outline in the morning. They're going to have to identify her body after that.
John has sent this
all
one.
that roadkill on one plate.
I'm actually fine with that. I mean, I think it may be sponsored by a cardiologist, but nonetheless, at least it looks like a good, honest plate of food.
Caroline, don't take any notice of them. How about this? This is from John, and it's a bit of Italian. Oh my God! Well, actually, I mean, that looks like restaurant standard. I don't know if he is at home, but I think he is. Does that look pretty good to you, Scott? You're Italian, aren't you? Half Italian?
I am. Thanks for remembering, Mark. It looks all right. It's okay. I'd be hungry. I'd leave that table and I'd be hungrier than I was when I sat down. I don't need a half an artichoke and some splintered tomatoes. I need some real food, or else this date is not going any farther. There's nothing else is going to happen.
Must have his
I'm
meat.
sort of assuming that's a starter or something, but I mean, actually, that looks pretty good to me. I mean, you've got some nice-looking pasta, you've got some cherry tomatoes. Somebody's made some effort with the sauce. I mean, that looks entirely edible to me.
Oh my God! How many more of these shall we do? Let's have a look. We'll probably do some more dinners in a minute, but let's finish for now on Steve. And this is chicken with sweet chili sauce, veg, and mushrooms with onions. What do we think of that? Okay, I'll let you have the first go at this, Scott.
That looks lovely to me. That looks really nice. I'd like, but the rest of it looks very, very nice. Actually, I'll give this 6.5.
That looks, it's nice, hearty, very pleasant. I would eat that.
Yeah.
And do you care to give me an out of 10?
Oh yeah, I don't know, 15 or something. I mean, a 5 out of 10 or something. I mean, it's fine. I mean, it's of course it's simple food, but I mean, it looks entirely enjoyable,
Well, it's been a 3-course meal discussing this with both of you. So my sincere thanks to the brilliant comedian Scott Capurro, who'll be back on Headliners in the next few days. Can't wait for that. One of my all-time favourite comedians. And by the way, do watch Mrs. Doubtfire, one of the greatest comedy films ever made. And Scott has a major role. It's not a blink and you'll miss it. A brilliant starring role alongside Robin Williams. That's Mrs. Doubtfire. And one of the best comics out there. And also our wonderful, amazing, fabulous food expert. Let me congratulate Andy. I'll congratulate Andy because he's the thinnest food critic I've ever seen.
You haven't met very many, but still, there we go. So
nice job. Andy
Please take me
Haler,
to dinner, Andy.
Please
take me to dinner, please.
There you go. Oh, dear. Scott's not happy.
I'd be happy to.
Send him a spotted dick and let's see how the evening pans out. Thank you so much, Andy and Scott. Well, that is what my guests think. But what do you think? We asked on Twitter, is British food rubbish? 74% said no and 26% said yes. We are going to do lots more of your dinners later in the show. But let me tell you that we've got our panel reacting to all of the big stories. A quick word from each of them on British cuisine. Let me start with you, Rakib Hassan. Is British food any good?
Well, I think it is. And I think that Scott was talking a load of nonsense. And if he's living in Bethnal Green, there's plenty of authentic Bangladeshi cuisine that he could have there. He needs to go out more and sample more of his local surroundings.
Well, it is.
Listen, Mark, I'm looking at some British dishes like beef Wellington.
Lovely.
Sort of salt marsh lamb from Wales, which is grazed on samphire. And then look at the desserts that we have as well, like Scottish Dundee cake, Scottish shortbread. Then I think about Tunnock's tea cakes, which is sold in 40 countries, especially popular in the Middle East. So there has to be something going for British food, isn't it?
Well, absolutely. Daniela, what's your favourite British classic meal?
I like a roast dinner, I have to say, but I am from East London, so I do like a bit of pie and mash. But if he's in Bethnal Green, why has he not gone to Peliches? It's like the best place. It's been there for over 50 years, family run, everything's homemade. Like, why have you not been there? Where is this guy living?
He is missing a trick.
He really
the truth is, Ingrid, that here in Britain, we're a melting pot, aren't we? My parents are Irish. I know that you have come from Norwegian stock. The point about British food is there's not really such a thing as British food, is there? It's a wonderfully global cuisine. We love curries, we love Italian food. We just love everything.
We do love everything, and I was nitpicking when it was Bangladeshi. In actual fact, I think that a curry is the most popular dish in the whole of the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
So there we go. But, you know, it's a long time since I've sent a meal back. Actually, I don't even do that. I don't like complaining, but I just don't eat it and just say, no, sorry. It's a long, long time since I've had what I would call a bad meal. So I think that, you know, we've really improved over the years. Presentation is very important, and I have to say that what your viewers sent in, all very nice and everything, but, the presentation was terrible, and it just kills it, because I think the eye, to see it first, you've kind of almost tasted it. It looks delicious. If it doesn't look delicious, automatically it just doesn't taste it. It's kind of a psychological thing, maybe, but... Anyway.
Listen, it's all about presentation, a bit like this show. Now, we've got lots more to come, and what we're going to do, producer Greg has agreed to show more of your dinners at 10:15, just before Kinsey Schofield. So we will rate more of your plates then. So thanks so much for sending them in. I think we've got loads, so unless you've got something really extraordinary, then maybe we've got enough. But the email, of course, remains open, mark@gbnews.uk. We will rate your plate at 10:15. Lots more to come. We've got the papers uninterrupted at exactly 10:30. And in my take at 10, at the top of the hour, why racism won't solve racism. Extraordinary story. White students at a London university banned from a Black History Month event. The world's gone mad. We'll discuss that at 10. Much more, of course, my all-star panel. But next, is Joe Biden risking World War III? See you shortly.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Well, lots of emails coming in about whether British food is substandard. A Man City wag said that the restaurants in Manchester are not good and she was not enjoying British cuisine. David says, Mark, there's nothing wrong with British food. In fact, David says there's nought wrong with British food. They need to be more selective where they eat. Also, she needs to sharpen up her husband's cooking skills. I agree with you, David. I bet you're a whiz in the kitchen. Thank you for that. Robert says, Mark, British food is tasty, filling and comforting. Foreign food is pretty on the plate, but not filling and not worth what you pay for it. Well, I agree, Robert. French food's a bloody disaster. You've got to have a cheese sandwich after you've been to a French restaurant. How about Patrick, who says, is British food rubbish? Well, don't worry. If the World Economic Forum cabal get their way, we'll be enjoying crickets and various types of bugs. Those who control the food and energy control the population. Heed the warning. Patrick, thank you for that. I'll get to more of your emails shortly, but let's now tackle an important issue, and it's causing much concern. French President Emmanuel Macron is not someone I normally agree with, but I think he's got this absolutely right. He's called out Joe Biden after the president went off script during a private event, warning a potential nuclear Armageddon would happen. US officials were quick to reassure the nation's allies that there's no new evidence that Putin's planning a nuclear strike anytime soon. But Macron said we must speak with prudence when commenting on such matters. So is this kind of inflammatory language risking a hot war with Russia and, God forbid, World War III? Joining me now is the brilliant political commentator and best-selling author of America on Its Knees, which is now a book that everyone's talking about stateside, The Cost of Replacing Trump with Biden. It's Ed Brodo, and he joins me now. Hi, Ed.
Hello, Mark. How are you?
I'm very well. Congratulations on the book, which I know has set America alight, because half of America doesn't like the message, which is it was a mistake getting rid of Donald Trump.
Totally. If Donald Trump were in the White House, we wouldn't have the mess we're in right now. Putin would never have invaded the Ukraine, and we wouldn't have a president making a lot of stupid comments the way Biden does.
Let's take a look at the former president talking in very judicious terms about how we must navigate our relationship with Russia. Very temperate language, which I wish we got from Joe Biden. Take a look at Donald Trump in 2018.
But it would be much easier for me to be so tough. The tougher I am on Russia, the better. But you know what? I want to do the right thing for the American people. And to be honest, secondarily, I want to do the right thing for the world. If Russia and the United States actually got together and got along, and don't forget, we're a very powerful nuclear country, and so are they. There's no upside. We're a very powerful nuclear country. And so are they. I've been briefed, and I can tell you one thing about a briefing that we're allowed to say because anybody that ever read the most basic book can say it. Nuclear holocaust would be like no other. They're a very powerful nuclear country, and so are we. If we have a good relationship with Russia, believe me, that's a good thing.
That is circumspect language from the former president, but we've had the current president talking about a possible nuclear war, talking up a hot war with Russia, Ed. And of course, a year ago, it wasn't a year ago, it was just under a year ago, he let slip that he'd like regime change in Moscow, which was quickly refuted by the White House. This guy's a liability.
Totally. His handlers should get him to keep his mouth shut. But in his defense, well, not in his defense, let me just say that Putin started this whole business with nuclear war. He brought it up. Biden is responding to it, but he's responding to it in a very irresponsible way, which is the way he always does things. And the big thing that Biden did that I really object to is when he got us out of Afghanistan. He did it in such an irresponsible way that he sent a message to Putin that the U.S. has no backbone. And that is what I believe led Putin to go into Ukraine. If Biden hadn't pulled us out of Afghanistan and given away all those weapons, we wouldn't have this mess right now in Ukraine. So Biden is a liability. Biden is the president in name only, in title only. We don't know who's really running the country. All we know is it's not Joe Biden.
How likely is a hot war with Russia, do you think? Is there an appetite among the American people? Is that the direction of travel now?
No, absolutely not. There's no appetite for it anywhere except you have these two leaders of these major countries who are off. Putin is one step away from being a madman, and Biden is a madman. So that's really scary. I was watching a movie last night where there's Russia and the U.S. are about to have a nuclear war, and the president of the United States is there with his advisors. They're trying to decide, should they launch missiles? And I thought to myself right away, what if this really happened and Biden had to make that decision? We'd be lost. He's totally incapable of carrying out the function of the president. And frankly, that scares me more than nuclear war.
Briefly, Ed, are your concerns around Biden just the things he thinks, his politics, or is it his cognition? What's a bigger concern, how well he is or how wrong he is?
My concern is for both. I'm concerned with the fact that his cognition is out the window. I'm also concerned with the fact that he has surrendered to the extreme left wing of the Democratic Party, which would like to turn America into a socialist, totalitarian dictatorship run by the deep state. The deep state being the unappointed bureaucrats that live and work in Washington. So both of those things scare the hell out of me.
Briefly, though, Ed, there are millions of Americans that are very happy with their president and they'd likely re-elect him again in 2024.
That scares me also. And the reason for that is the media is in the pocket of the Democratic Party, and they've been putting out all kinds of misinformation. And there are millions of Americans who are not aware of what's really going on. They don't understand. If they did, I believe that they would not be voting Democratic. But because the media has misled them, that's why you have all these people voting for the Democratic Party, which is an un-American party that wants to destroy this country.
Ed Brodo, an absolute privilege to have you on the programme. Congratulations on the reception that your new book is getting, America on Its Knees. It's out now, and I'm sure Ed will catch up in the near future to discuss all things US politics. Why do we discuss it? Because it affects us as well. Because if we don't have a strong president in the White House, the free world is not safe. Coming up in my take at 10, an astonishing story. A major university in London, has banned white students from attending a Black History Month event. Well, in my take at 10, I'll be saying racism doesn't solve racism and two wrongs don't make a right. Plus, the Sunday papers, uninterrupted with full panel reaction. Lots to get through. See you in 2.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Coming up in my Take at 10, why racism won't solve racism. An astonishing story. White students have been told not to attend a Black History Month event. And let me tell you, history teaches us that it's not good to prejudge people based upon the colour of their skin. It's a hot topic, and I'd like to get your views on it. Mark at gbnews.uk. That is my Take at 10 in just a couple of minutes' time. In the news agenda with my panel, does the court action by Elton John and the Sussexes risk the future of the Daily Mail newspaper? Also, will that slap prevent Will Smith from winning another Oscar? And as Jimmy Carr's father goes to court against his own son, is it wrong to sue a family member? Plus, the Sunday papers uninterrupted at exactly 10:30. And I'm excited to say the queen of US showbiz, political and royal reporting, Kinsey Schofield, live from Hollywood, California. It's an evening of the stars, of course, the biggest of which is our news team and head of Rihanna Jones.
Your top stories from the GB newsroom. Hundreds of people, including Irish political leaders, have attended a service in County Donegal to remember the victims of a petrol station explosion. Earlier this evening, Irish Prime Minister Michael Martin visited the scene of the village of Creesler, calling it a very sad day. 10 people were killed in yesterday's blast, including 2 teenagers, one named locally as Leona Harper, and a schoolgirl. Police in Ireland say the search operation has now ended, but they will continue with their investigation. Former Deputy Leader of the DUP, Lord Nigel Dodds, has called the incident horrendous.
Every one of us can relate to calling into a filling station or wanting to call in and get some groceries or a snack or something, and to be caught up in something like this is just horrendous. And when you hear those who've died include men, women, teenagers, a young child, it really is awful. Our hearts and prayers are with the bereaved of those who have lost their lives, and obviously hope and pray that those that have been injured make a swift recovery.
The former Trade Minister has said he's looking forward to clearing his name. That's following allegations of inappropriate behaviour. Conor Burns was sacked from the government after a complaint of serious misconduct. He's reiterated he will cooperate fully with the investigation and that he's committed to public services.
The last 24 hours have been distressing and devastating. I've still not had any information from the party of the nature of the complaint. I say, as I said in my statement, that I will cooperate fully with the party when they engage with me, and I look forward to clearing my name. I can't say anything more, I'm sorry, at this time.
Serial killer Peter Tobin has died at the age of 76 after becoming unwell in prison. He was taken to hospital from HMP Edinburgh, where he was serving 3 life sentences for the rape and murder of Polish student Angelika Kluk, and the murders of teenagers Vicky Hamilton and Dinah McNichol in 1991. Detectives questioned Tobin on his deathbed about other murders they believe he may have committed, but he refused to give any details. A large explosion has seriously damaged the only road and rail bridge linking the occupied Crimean Peninsula to Russia. Russian authorities say 3 people have died in the blast on the Kerch Bridge, which is crucial to supplying the peninsula and Russian forces across Ukraine. Moscow says the train line has now reopened. It's not yet clear if it was a deliberate attack by Ukraine. And only around 1 in 5 trains have been running today across Scotland, England and Wales. Members of the RMT union are staging their 8th strike this year in a long-running dispute over pay and conditions. Tomorrow, around half of the UK railway network will be closed, and those trains that are running will only operate from 7:30 in the morning until 6:30 in the evening. TV online and DAB Plus radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Mark Dolan tonight.
Many thanks to Rhiannon, who returns in an hour's time. Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. Big stories, big guests, and always big opinions. In my take at 10, in just one moment, a university in London has banned white students from attending Black History Month. You couldn't make it up. My unapologetic views on this shortly, and I'm not pulling my punches. In the news agenda with my panel, does the court action by Elton John and the Sussexes risk the future of the Daily Mail newspaper? Also, will that slap prevent Will Smith from winning another Oscar? And as Jimmy Carr's father goes to court against his own son, is it wrong to sue a family member? Plus, Sunday's papers uninterrupted at exactly 10:30 sharp with full panel reaction. But first, my take at 10. There's an old saying, history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. The Telegraph newspaper reports a story with eerie parallels to the past. Westminster University's student union has banned white students from selected events during Black History Month. They've said some events will be reserved for black students to encourage a safe space for discussions and honest conversations. This bizarre policy, which can achieve only more division, has strong echoes of apartheid in South Africa and racial segregation in America, with the key metric being your race. How many times do we have to go back to the words of wisdom of civil rights icon Martin Luther King, who said, "I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the colour of their skin, but by the content of their character." The bizarre, pig-headed, twisted, illogical and frankly amoral groups behind policies like this, which is rooted in so-called critical race theory, which says anyone not of colour is basically racist, must be challenged, debated, called out and brought to account. This obsession with identity politics is splitting our communities and making racial and cultural integration, both celebrated British successes, harder to achieve. But that's what these divisive race baiters want. They never want us to come together, as their currency is division and victimhood. They're the same people attacking our amazing new Chancellor, Kwasi Kwarteng, for daring to be both a black man and a Conservative. They're the same people who at Labour Party conference in 2019, during a debate in the hall, said, "Can we please not have any more questions from white men?" Now, I'm no expert in race relations, and I understand it's a very complex issue. But let me tell you that as long as I've been on this earth, it's pretty clear to me that racism does not fix racism, and that 2 wrongs don't make a right. The message we need to hear from the university establishment, the media, the arts, corporations, and our politicians is that yes, racism exists. It's the most horrific stain on humanity. But it must be tackled through education, understanding, conversation, empathy, and the wider societal goal of equal opportunities for everyone. For we must lift everyone up, irrespective of their social class, their gender, their skin colour, their religion, their race, or their orientation. We're all brothers and sisters in the eyes of God. And it's time for this great nation to come together as one community, to heal together, to learn together, and to grow together. We're all Brits, and we must move forward to a better future, hand in hand, as one. Is it acceptable for a London-based university to exclude white students from a Black History Month event? Surely it would be useful for them to be present. Surely they want everyone in attendance. But what's your view? Let me know if you support the university's decision on this occasion. My email is mark@gbnews.uk. I'll get to your emails shortly, but reacting to that and all of the big stories of the day, my all-star panel of TV personality Ingrid Tarrant, research analyst, writer and broadcaster Dr. Rakib Ehsan, and soap icon, author and presenter Daniela Westbrook. Ingrid, let me start with you. What's your reaction to this decision by London University to exclude white students from a Black History Month event?
No, it just infuriates me. It's such hypocrisy. You know, where the white people are being accused of being racist, but it's working now the other way around. It makes me almost become a little bit racist. I've always been colourblind. I've always judged people on their... Well, like Martin Luther King, it's the content of the character, its ability, it's your kindness, your place in society. I couldn't care less what colour, what race, what creed anybody is. As long as they're nice people and you have a rapport, that's all that counts. But what I find so extraordinary as well, you know, with the people that are accusing, you know, white elitists and all the rest of it, and going back to slavery, it would help, surely, that white people are there to understand the gripes of the black people. Maybe, you know, colonialism and all that, maybe it's a little bit of an eye-opener, and white people, not necessarily white people, but others as well, other Asians and so on, could actually learn from that. But the other thing, I think, what about the Notting Hill Carnival? Does that mean that sort of if they're going to start sort of saying, oh, whites are excluded from the university, that we can't go to Notting Hill Carnival, which is very, very much an ethnic and black festival every year. Everybody loves it. It's the melting pot. That's what we are. And we must learn to tolerate and not create this division. And this is making it far, far worse. But it's funny that the minority are the ones now creating the division. And I think, actually, perhaps they don't have a right, really, if we're going to start getting deep down dirty on this.
Ingrid, I suspect, and it's very often the case, that you mentioned that maybe it's people of colour who are behind policies like this. That's not my experience. Very often it's woke white people that superimpose this nonsense on everyone. Sort of virtue signalling woke nutters, you know, and that's my concern. I wonder, Ingrid, whether a rule like this is even legal. I mean, I'd love to see this pursued through the courts.
Well, that's an interesting point, actually. It's very discriminatory, absolutely. And also, there you have a very good point as well. Is it wokeism gone mad? But what hasn't happened so far is that nobody has stood up to say, this is utter nonsense as well. The university haven't. So are you saying that the whole of that university is woke? Isn't there kind of a balanced point of view that other people will actually contradict that and just say, this is ridiculous, we don't want that? I mean, should there be a little referendum in the university? I mean, to me, it's completely nuts and nanas.
I know the university really well. It is one of the best universities on the planet. Very diverse students, amazing attainment, great teaching. So they've really just lost the plot on this one, haven't they, Rakib?
Well, I think that if student unions at universities are organising events which are essentially just for a specific race and it's exclusionary, then I think that is a form of racial segregation which has no place in the British education system. As you said, Mark, if you want a truly anti-racist endeavour, should be promoting interracial cohesion, and that requires contact between different racial groups, having admittedly sensitive conversations, and that will include history. And it will also include... universities should be hubs of intercultural exchange. So I think that this is a form of racial segregation which has no place in the UK, and actually what it shows is the importation of US race politics coming into the UK and ultimately taking hold in our education system. And I think there's been a real lack of intellectual leadership that should be calling this out, this rhetoric of safe spaces. In reality, it has the potential to undermine race relations in our country.
Well, yes, you mentioned US race relations, and we shouldn't have policies that mirror the US situation, Rakib, because America has a very different history in terms of race relations. Particularly the fact that they had effective apartheid right up until the 1960s, which here in Britain we did not.
Absolutely, Mark. I've always made the point that when it comes to anti-racism in the UK, that has to focus on racial equality in the British context. And I think there's a problem here when you have this brainless importation of US race politics in the British setting. So when you have BLM demonstrations in the UK, where you have protesters chanting, "Don't shoot," at British police officers, Makes no sense, Mark, because the vast majority of British police officers are unarmed and they support that model of policing. So if you want to focus on the bread and butter of racial equality in the UK, anti-racists in the UK need to focus what's going on in their own country and stop drawing inspiration from what's going on across the Atlantic.
Daniela, the acting world is very diverse. What's your view about a policy like this?
Is it a policy? I mean, when I'm reading it here, it says it's just for that 1 month. And it's only for one thing. We can't judge a whole university and a whole group of people.
And you're right. And of course, it's also the student union, not the university
it's
itself.
Not the university. It's the student union. It's for Black Lives Matter month, which is important. Of course, it's important. We can all learn from that. And if that's their policy, let them speak up and say, well, I think we're just taking a few things from it and we're just chucking the book at everyone again. I think there's a lot more to it than what we're actually just reading on one paragraph here. I don't think it's really a massive racist thing. They're just talking about certain subjects.
Yeah, but do you think it crosses the line, Daniela, that they should restrict white students from attending, though? I mean, can you imagine the scenes?
I can't really say. I mean, it's a student body that are doing it, not the university. So it's a group of kids that are doing, a student body thing. You can't really judge the whole university on that because this could go AWOL and get out of control and people start...
Well, it is a free... I suppose it's a free country, and if that's how the union want to set up some of these events, I guess if it's within the law, why would you stop them?
Also, there's a lot of things in history that have been very important to us, that are very important to people of that race as well, that they should be allowed their privacy to speak about their ancestors and things like that. Maybe, it's a situation where it is a safe place for them to share that. Don't see that always as racist.
But we
always
could
say that as racist, though.
Ingrid?
No, but we could learn from that. Sort of like, perhaps there isn't enough conversation, perhaps there isn't enough dialogue and understanding to be able to really have a healthy debate about, well, you did this to us, and therefore this is why we're doing this back to you.
But this is what I'm saying. It can't just be across the board. Why is it always got to be he said she? Like, no argument. Just
no, but then that way. But then behind closed doors, you're not going to have that healthy debate to really put this in perspective.
Not if it's being portrayed in this manner of what this headline is. No, it's not, because it's just set up ready to fail. Ready to put people against people, and that's not.
Well, that's exactly it. But we shouldn't be doing that. So it should be open to absolutely everybody. And actually, the university perhaps should actually be saying the students don't dictate what goes on here. Ultimately, it's the head, it's the don of the university that's going to say this is how the shape of the university is and how it's going to continue.
Although Ingrid, briefly, Ingrid, perhaps Daniela's got a point here that. If there were issues around male violence, perhaps women would like to just be among other women when discussing those issues. Perhaps there are parallels there with female-only spaces.
Yeah, but it's not a dangerous space. It might be an inflammatory conversation, but it's not dangerous. You're not going to suddenly get a man, jumping up and stabbing somebody. If a woman says something derogatory about a subject that is kind of primarily aimed at men. I disagree. I think that... men will learn how women really feel, vice versa. I just think we need to talk. It's a breakdown of communication in life that causes the bigger problems than actually... It's better to have an argument over a conversation than assume that conversation has taken place and then fight about it on the assumption that something's been said that actually probably hasn't. It's all learning to understand each other.
OK, well, let me know your thoughts, Mark, at gbnews.uk. We've got the Sunday papers uninterrupted at 10:30 sharp with lots of big political stories. How long can Liz Truss cling on? We'll find out what Fleet Street think in just a few minutes. Also, does the court action by Elton John and the Sussexes risk the future of the Daily Mail? And will that slap prevent Will Smith from winning another Oscar? We'll be asking the Queen of US showbiz and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield, in just a couple of minutes. Plus, I'll be rating more of your dinners. See you in 2.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Now, a footballer's wife, a wag married to a Man City star, has criticised British food. She lives in Manchester. She doesn't like the restaurants. Everything's frozen. So we've been asking, is British food rubbish or is it great? You've been sending in your dinners and your puddings. This from Nick, who sent in some rice pudding, which is a British classic, and he hasn't even bothered to take it out of the tin. And why would you? It's Saturday night. We're in chill-out zone. And by the way, what a lovely brew you've got going as well, Nick. How about Eddie, who sent us a fabulous pizza? Pizza and chips, by the way, one of my all-time hard, and she has earned that break on a Saturday night. I do like the look of her. In deserve worldwide recognition. I don't know what does. Blimey, that looks delicious. Those roasties look proper crunchy. Well done, Corey. Andy. Oh, that looks absolutely delicious. A very healthy dinner with some new potatoes and plenty of veg. Well done, Big Andy. Lucius has made prawn and chickpea bulgur salad. Look at my posh audience. Well done, Lucius. Tony, steak and beans. Very healthy. That's low carb. You'll get thin doing that. Cut those carbohydrates and the weight will just fall off. Ingrid, not ours, but our lovely viewer, has had asparagus with butter and sea salt. Oh, my God, sophisticated. Lucy, pie and mash. Old school. God, I do like the look of that mash. Has that got butter in? I do hope so. Double cream? Yes, please. We'll get to more of your dinners at the end of the show if we've got time. Thanks for sending them in. It's time now for US News with the Queen of US Showbiz, Royal and Political Reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Hey, Kinsey.
Hi, Mark. So good to see you.
It's wonderful to see you. Where should we start? Perhaps with the President, Joe Biden, and another senior moment.
Yes, this happened on Friday, and do I have 3 words for you? Please, 2 words for you. Please send help.
Yes, Joe Biden said, I've got 2 words, but apparently he's not good at maths. I think we've got the video, have we? Let's take a look. We're just loading it now. OK, we'll get to that very, very shortly. It's obviously not ideal. We talked about Joe Biden earlier. What else is in your inbox this week, Kinsey? What shall we talk about? Kanye West, who's made a bit of a splash with a certain T-shirt.
Yeah, I keep forgetting to call him Ye. I want to call him Kanye, but he's actually legally changed his name to Ye West, and he appeared at Paris Fashion Week, and I mean, he stole all the headlines, Mark, with these White Lives Matter shirts. That's actually Ye and Candace Owens. She's a pretty controversial conservative commentator here in the States. She went out there to Paris Fashion Week to model this T-shirt with Kanye. He actually wore this shirt last night to one of his children's basketball games. Kim Kardashian sat in front of him and refused to acknowledge him. And we learned a little bit later in the night that she had snuck outside and moved her car onto the other side of the building to avoid any interaction with him because she's so she just wants to distance herself from this controversy. Kanye talked to Tucker Carlson this last week and said, look, I did it because I thought it was funny. My father said it's just a black man stating the obvious. And I wanted to acknowledge that Black Lives Matter is a scam.
Well, yes. I mean, I think in many ways, criticism of that T-shirt, yes, it would be, I guess, offensive if somebody that wasn't of colour wore it. But he's a black man. Is he not allowed to reject the ideology of BLM?
You know, I was so nervous to talk to you about this tonight, Mark. I am not going to lie. I was so nervous. I wrote an astrologer and was like, help me navigate this situation because I don't want to offend anybody. But here's what I will say. Kanye West is much smarter than I am. He's a much smarter business person than I am. He's a much more creative individual than I am. And I refuse to question anything he does. I think that we all have the right to speak our truth and to say what's in our hearts. He's a man that's driven by God. You know, he's constantly talking about his relationship with Jesus Christ. And so I am going to let him do what he wants to do. And there's no way I'm ever going to challenge him because he calls you out.
Absolutely right. Well, there's been a bit of calling out in relation to the British press. The Sussexes, Harry and Meghan, and Sir Elton John suing the Daily Mail newspaper group. Could this threaten what is one of the biggest media empires in the world? The Mail Online, of course, is the most read English language newspaper on the planet.
Yeah, I think it's almost like you wake up every morning and open it. It's a religiously. You've got to make sure you know what's going on with your day because the Daily Mail's got everything covered and they've got the best sources. You're absolutely right. And I do think that it's interesting to see so many people attached to this lawsuit. I think it's concerning to the Daily Mail. Probably it feels like a punch, but they've got to prove that they did the things that they're claiming. They're saying that employees of the publisher would pretend to be doctors and pretend to be different people to get financial records and to get medical records, and they're saying that people snuck into their homes and hid microphones. These are really serious allegations, and I don't know what they have to back it up. So hopefully they have those things if they're going to accuse the Daily Mail of being so nefarious.
Absolutely. Well, the Mail and the parent company deny the allegations. We watch with interest how that legal action plays out. Kinsey, speaking of legal action, the very rich comedian Eddie Murphy's had to cough up a few £1,000s for a British pop star. Tell me more.
A mark, $35,000 a month to Mel B. Eddie Murphy is going to pay her in child support. Now, this is about $10,000 more than he was paying her a month in child support. In 2020, she reached out to a judge and said that she wasn't making as much as she was used to, and she needed him to cough up a little more. The judge has agreed just recently, and he's going to have to pay some back pay as well. But that is a lot of money, $35,000 a month. And their daughter Angel is 15 years old, so he's only going to have to do this for 3 more years. But it's got me thinking, Mark, I might need to procreate with somebody that makes a lot more money than I do.
Well, you'll be behind me in the queue, Kinsey. Let me tell you that. By the way, Joe Biden this week, he said, let me tell you my 2 favourite words, made in America. He's nearly as bad at maths as I am. Kinsey, a thrill to have you as always, and can't wait to see you in a week's time.
Thank you, sir.
The Queen of US Showbiz Royal and Political Reporting, Kinsey Schofield. What's next? Tomorrow's Sunday Papers. Uninterrupted with full panel reaction and lots of politics and lots of Liz Truss. See you in 2.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness, mate.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
It's 10:31, so it's time for this. That's right, hot off the press, tomorrow's Sunday papers live and uninterrupted until 11 o'clock every Saturday night. And let's start with the Telegraph, and they're leading with the following. Truss tells MPs unite or face disaster. Liz Truss will issue a stark warning to Tory MPs returning to Parliament this week to stop undermining her or face a monstrous coalition of Labour and the SNP. A Number 10 source warned that the PM needed time and the full backing of the party to implement her plan to grow the economy. In the absence of that, the cold, hard reality would be Sir Keir Starmer in Downing Street, propped up by Nicola Sturgeon's SNP. The intervention came as Tories' most senior volunteers wrote an unprecedented open letter to the Telegraph newspaper, warning MPs to stop infighting, unite behind the PM and focus on delivering for Britain. Also, ministers blame the bank for soaring mortgage costs. Cabinet ministers believe the government is being unfairly held responsible for rising mortgage rates, with senior figures privately blaming the Bank of England. Ministers are accusing the bank of being too slow to tackle inflation. Also, fly tipping up by 40% as trivial fines fail to deter polluters. The Sunday Times now. Bridge blast opens up Crimea. Explosion on landmark funded by Kremlin gives Ukraine hope it can retake occupied peninsula in what looks to be a strategic disaster for Russia, certainly a setback. A landmark bridge built by Vladimir Putin to link the annexed Crimean peninsula to Russia was seriously damaged this morning, by a massive explosion, dealing a powerful symbolic and strategic blow to the Kremlin leader's war effort against Ukraine. The attack, thought to have been masterminded by Ukrainian special forces, sparked jubilation in Kyiv, but it's raised fears of retaliation by Putin, who's come under pressure in recent days from hardliners urging him to strike Ukraine with tactical nuclear weapons. PM set to cave on benefits rise. Liz Truss is expected to cave into pressure from her cabinet to increase welfare benefits in line with inflation, not average wages. And Eco Flashpoint pits trust versus trust. That's right, trust versus trust. The boss of the National Trust has threatened to mobilise her almost 6 million members in a mass campaign to defend the environment. Sunday Express now. Heads down and charge. Liz Truss has told her battle-weary MPs to quit navel-gazing and gear up for a year of hard graft. The PM has bluntly warned that only a relentless focus on delivery will save them from defeat at the next election. In a rallying call to downcast ministers, she vowed to lead them on a strategy of heads down and charge. She's convinced putting on a united front and working flat out to revive the economy is the path to victory. The Sun on Sunday now. Dancer Abby's heartbreak. Strictly star AJ ditched me for model. Dancer Abby Quinnan has revealed her heartache after being dumped by Strictly star AJ Pritchard for a stunning model. Oh dear, that's showbiz. Sunday Mirror now. Peter Tobin's wife speaks out. Serial killer Peter Tobin's ex says she's happy he's dead. Kathy Wilson said he was a monster and there's a feeling of relief, but she said it meant he'd taken his secrets to the grave when he died earlier today at the age of 76 after refusing to confess to other murders on his deathbed. Kathy, who met Tobin when she was 16, said families of girls who disappeared will never get the answers they need. The independent blast hits key Russian supply route, and Truss's bid to sideline Home Office on migrants. Number 10 is attempting to sideline her Home Secretary in order to loosen immigration rules. Liz Truss is keen to hand out more visas to achieve the growth that she needs to save her premiership, but is facing defiance from Suella Braverman. But business leaders pushing for more foreign workers have been urged to ignore the Home Office and lobby other departments. Sources say they were told to put their evidence to the Business Secretary Jacob Rees-Mogg or Cabinet Office Minister Nadeem Zahawi. The Observer next, Putin dealt a bitter blow as blast cripples key bridge to Crimea, and Truss facing a rural rebellion for anti-nature growth push. Concerns there about the impact of some of Liz Truss's pro-growth policies on the environment. Mail on Sunday now. Number 10 aide takes aim at rebellion ringleader over attacks on Truss. Sadistic Gove told stop plots or let in Starmer. And last but not least, Daily Star Sunday. It's strife, Jim, but not as we know it. Clean me up, Scotty. William Shatner lives up to name and reveals tummy trouble on stage. William Shatner's comedy gig was nearly ruined by a captain's log. The Star Trek legend had to waddle off and swap his kecks mid-act. We've all been there.
No.
Well, those are your front pages on that rather lavatorial note. Let's get reaction now from my fantastic panel of Ingrid Tarrant, Rakib Ehsan and Daniela Westbrook. First of all, do we think, Rakib, that the explosion of this bridge, which links Russia to the Crimea, is an important setback for Putin? Could this be the beginning of the end?
Well, it's a very important strategic development, that's for sure. It offers a vital transportation link for the Kremlin in terms of moving military supplies into Ukraine. Various sources in terms of what's behind the blast, what was the reason for the blast. But in terms of will it bring an abrupt end to the conflict, I severely doubt that.
No, I guess it's a death by 1,000 cuts for Putin, isn't it? Just lots of these strategic developments and grind him down.
I think that could be one approach that Ukraine might be, supportive of. The matter. It's a war of attrition, you could say. But for me, I personally suspect that this is going to be a war that's going to be a prolonged one.
Well, yes, I spoke to the renowned historian Martin Whittock, Ingrid, who's written at length about Russia, and he's described this as the forever war.
It looks that way, and this is very, very provocative. And I can't stand the way that this even began. And let's not forget, it began with NATO, so saying, hi, Ukraine, would you like to join us, blah, blah, blah. So that was very provocative. It went against the Minsk agreement and everything. I'm dead against it. And again, from the beginning, looking at it as a whole and trying to get this in perspective, I was thinking, I can't imagine that Putin is lining up to attack, more likely to defend. But this is a real body blow, and it is another huge provocation. He's just taken over Donbass, I can't remember the names, Kursk and, whatever, which was, people say that it's rigged. How do we know? I'm believing it. I want to believe it. It's very, very Russian, and they want to still remain part of Russia. So that has obviously upset America, NATO, and Zelensky. I mean, this is an ugly, ugly war, and it's got to stop. And they have to sit down and talk about it. And I read the speech that Putin gave, and he does want to stop this. He wants to have discussions. Ukraine have behaved appallingly towards the Crimeans since 2014, cutting off supplies, electricity, murders that haven't come to light because it's all being hushed up. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I'm looking at this at a whole, in a whole, and why they would not want a lot of this information to be revealed. When I say they, I'm talking about NATO, USA, UK. And interestingly, when the Nord Stream 1 and 2 got blown up, Germany said they didn't think it was the Russians. So what does that say? So if it isn't the Russians, who could it be? Well, I think, well, it's America, UK, NATO, some of the NATO things, because, of course, Germany is. But I'm not liking this at all. I think it's ugly.
The Ukrainians' actions in regard to Crimea, but, of course, it was Crimea that was invaded by Russia, annexed by Russia in 2014.
Yes, but they are fundamentally Russian. They're Orthodox Russians. Nobody interfered at that time, and as far as we know, they haven't gone, don't want to be part of Russia, we want to be part of Ukraine. But the Ukrainians behaved appallingly to them, cutting off, as I say, electricity and supplies, all sorts of supplies. So what does that tell you?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a deep, deep concern, and it's a sorry tale that looks set to run and run. Speaking of sorry tales, Daniela, heads down and charge. The Prime Minister's strategy to revive the economy, as Michael Gove is labelled a sadist who will put Labour in power. Look, whether you're left or right, we do need this government to unite, don't we, for the next 2 years in the national interest.
We sort of do, but we could have picked a better leader to do it, could we not? One that actually answers a question instead of just going silent on everything and waiting for a cue. For me, just for me the other day, watching something, people heckling her, and she waited for somebody to do something. That is not a person in power. She should have spoke over them. That should have been removed and things should have been done. I can't look at these people. I'd much rather look at a Labour... And I'm a Conservative normally. I would much rather look at a Labour government, I have to say.
So you'd rather have a Labour government than Liz Truss in power?
Yeah, 100%. I trust myself more with a spurt of diarrhoea than I do her running this country.
And what is your concern about Truss? Is it the way that she conducts herself, or is it the policies?
She just doesn't know conduct herself. Without being rude, she knows she's our Prime Minister, but she just looks like she's wandered off the queue at the PTA meeting to me. She doesn't answer anything back. There's no real urgency with anything. She's waiting for, somebody to queue her up. It's almost like someone's plugged her in a little bit. I want to see somebody, after coming off the back of Boris, say what you want about him. At least he had a bit of spark. This, to me, does not fill me with any greatness about England
Boris
anymore.
And her aren't leaders. They're just followers of whoever is, operating their little battery and who's winding them up behind.
No, but that's not no good to us as a country.
No, it's
my children are sitting out there trying to get mortgages and things. They can't.
Exactly.
No disrespect. There's kids wanting an education. We're going into looking, they're talking about us wearing masks again this Christmas. People can't afford to heat their houses, but they want us to stay indoors. And this is a woman that can't answer a thinking question. Please, next.
Well, yeah, you are a consummate performer, musical actress, also straight drama actress as well. Tell me about, her performance. Could she improve her speech making?
But it's
could
not
she
a
improve
performance.
her delivery?
She's not an actor. This is, it comes from here. You look at Churchill, he comes from here.
Yeah.
We come from here when he talks about, we'll fight them on the beach, we'll do... He's come from there. Where are these great leaders anymore? Where are they? And why are the people that could have been in power not been put in power and people like this been put in instead? I'm sorry, I have to ask the question, why?
Yeah, why? Because they're so easily
Because that's not what we want as a country, no matter who we vote for. We want somebody that can help.
Looking at more detail in terms of Liz Truss's plans, it seems that everything she wants to do gets thwarted by her own party, for better or worse, Rakib. So the Sunday Times now reporting that she's going to cave in on the benefits rise. Universal credit will likely go up in line with inflation, which is about 10% at the moment, rather than with average wages, which is about 5%. It's a big cost to the exchequer. What's your view on that?
Well, I think that it's the right decision to do it in line with inflation, to be honest. And I think that considering that the cost of living crisis, the most deprived households...
I can't believe you're saying that. And Daniela's nodding. Carry on, though.
No. I also felt that some of your commentary on Russia-Ukraine was a bit suspect. Ukraine is an independent, sovereign nation-state. It should be entitled to decide its own foreign policy. And in terms of Crimea, there was the 1991 independence referendum in Ukraine. Crimea voted 54% in favour of independence, which is a lot lower than the other regions, but it's still a majority. In terms of Crimea as well, there's been documented cases of Crimean Tatar Muslims suffering anti-Muslim prejudice at the hands of the Kremlin. So I wouldn't go in the business of romanticising what's going on in Crimea in terms of how Russia treats Crimeans. But now going back to Truss, I think her instincts are all wrong. I think that's where it boils down to. I think the mini budget that Kwasi Kwarteng delivered went down like a lead balloon. It led to considerable market turmoil. The reality of the matter is that there's very few libertarians in the British electorate. That might not be to your liking, Mark, but the reality is the British people, they don't want to be treated like a laboratory for a neoliberal, libertarian experiment.
Well, they'd like to live in a country where the economy grows, which is what happened in the 80s under Thatcher, and in fairness, in the late 90s and 2000s under Blair.
Mark, people don't...
What did both governments do, both New Labour and the Tories? They had low taxes.
Yes, 40%.
Yeah,
percentages by Blair.
But I'd say that much of New Labour, the growth that we saw there, was, well, ultimately what did it result to in terms of the sort of light touch regulation of the banking financial sector?
Yeah, that's true.
Labour spent a great deal as well.
It fed the monster of the credit crunch.
Absolutely. And I think here, people don't die for GDP. Well, that's the point that I would make. And of course I want to see growth, but the question is, how do you get there? Now, I've heard, I mean, looking at some of these stories here, that, you know, in terms of liberalising the immigration system, most people didn't vote for the Conservative Party to see a further liberalisation of the immigration system, especially those that voted Brexit as well. If I want to see growth, I want to see it through greater investment in the British people, in terms of investing in skills, in terms of lifting our own educational standards, as opposed to it being fuelled by an increase in immigration.
But that sounds like spending money rather than actual economic growth. You know, the word investment is a sort of snake oil term, which means cash, doesn't it?
Of course it does. Of course it does. But you have to...
But you have to make savings elsewhere.
Sometimes you have to put money in to get something out.
Exactly.
We have just sat 2.5 years at home and people losing their businesses and their job. People that don't actually want to be on universal credit, that have no choice of their own, have been told to sit at home and lost their businesses. You know, these are people that now can't get work, so they can't knock them and not knock
if the matter
anything else. There's a lot of people out of work down to that.
I agree. And I think that ultimately, if we're talking about fiscal conservatism, announcing the amount of unfunded tax cuts that they did in the mini-budget runs against fiscal conservatism.
OK, well, of course, that one is a hot topic. Can we talk about fly tipping? Daniela, up by 40%.
Why me? Because I'm the common one.
So
yeah, we saw you.
Yes, mate.
Fly tipping in England has risen 38% since 2010, figures show, as the Environment Minister promised to end the blight on our towns, cities and countryside. The rise has been accompanied by plummeting enforcement levels against waste crime offenders, with fines last year averaging £2.50 per offender. The British people, Daniela, they hate, dare I say it, littering, and they also hate fly tipping.
We do, yeah. And I'm one that, you know, I walk my dogs and I ride a lot of horses and stuff, so for me, I hate fly tipping. I can't bear it. But I have to say, I can only speak on where I am in Essex, and I think it's come down quite a lot. They have really cracked down on it. A lot of people have stopped doing it. A lot of people are picking up after themselves, and it's a lot cleaner place to be in Essex right now.
I think we need cameras, don't we? And we need tough fines and real sentences, Ingrid.
But you know what I think? We need not to charge them to dispose of the things. When you're fly tipping, it's like the big freezers, the mattresses, all sorts of... It's big things. It's white goods.
White goods, yeah.
And it costs so much for them to go and dispose of them in the tips. So they just think, and they get paid to dispose of them anyway. You pay them for them to go there, and they pay the price.
You can look at and make sure the company actually really do drop them off as well.
Yeah, so if you don't charge there, then it's cheaper not to charge to put them into the tips than it is for the council to come and clear out the fly tipping. And I have been actually a person very instrumental in getting rid of fridges and freezers and all sorts of things in our little village. It was an absolute eyesore, yes. And I got all my friends to help me, and we were picking up bags. It was actually gross because there were bags and stuff there as well. And one of my friends picked up a bag and then it burst and all this slime went all over it. And then we had to drive to the tip to dispose of it. We thought, oh God, this is so gross. But it needn't have happened. That's what I'm saying. It would have been cheaper, and it is cheaper for the council just to subsidise the tips, if you like, than what it costs them. Eventually, it's prevention rather than
because we pay a lot in council tax. It's not too much to ask, is it?
No.
And I think also, you know, the tips. I mean, I do go to tips. I've got a problem with the tip, by the way. I always come back with more than I went.
Me too.
I love that recycling.
And you're not supposed to take the stuff that's there, but I do.
Oh, we've got a little shop in ours. It is super duper sorted.
Sometimes they leave a few bits and pieces out, don't they? Like a carriage clock.
Oh, we've got a proper little shop.
Is that
where they salvage the good
and the
stuff.
money goes to charity.
Do you know what? Out where I am in Essex, if you leave it outside in the villages, outside, if somebody comes past, if you want it, take it, and if you don't, then when it goes away to be cycled.
Oh, there you go. Have you picked up any treasure?
Loads of times I have, yeah.
Have you really? I did. So I was in the dump maybe a few years ago, and I watched a guy get out of a very posh car, like a Range Rover, with what looked like a brand new children's bike, and he just took it and he just dropped it into one of those massive skips.
Is that awful?
I couldn't believe it. Anyway, so he then left, and I did another thing you're not supposed to do.
Rope ladder.
Well, I wasn't quite, but luckily I'm quite tall with long arms, and it was this actual
somebody holding your legs.
The skip was almost full.
Oh, lucky.
So I just leaned in, lifted this bike out. It was in mint condition. Took it home.
Oh.
My son played with it, rode it for about 3 years, and then we took it to a charity shop.
Well done,
It's
you.
a shocker what some people throw away.
It's everything's so disposable, but what a waste! If they just gave it to charity.
Imagine.
Somebody like your child.
I mean, this person could have left that bike in the street. And
anywhere.
A little kid would have. I mean, footballs is one. You don't need to throw footballs away.
No.
What you do is go to any neighbourhood and just leave a football somewhere.
Yeah.
Obviously not on the pavement as a hazard for a blind person or an elderly person.
Exactly, but
although you can get in trouble, by the way, because you know that tradition of like your little box of CDs and help yourself.
Yeah.
According to some local authorities, that is fly tipping. So you do have to be careful.
Oh, really? If it's on your driveway, that can be okay.
Yeah, but sadly, we don't all have driveways, you know.
Well, then make a winter box, Mark.
We're not all soap stars.
No, some of us work on news channels with lots more money living in London.
Too right. Let's have a chat about another story in the papers, and it's comedian Jimmy Carr being sued by his own father following a bitter 20-year feud. Jim, his father, says he's tired of the false characterisation that's being presented during Carr's stand-up performances. So it does beg the question, is it wrong to sue a family member? I know Jimmy Carr, he's a gentleman, a very talented guy, and he's got a big heart as well. But has he crossed the line suing his dad, Ingrid?
This is really difficult. I mean, this is not the mother-in-law.
Sorry. Let's get that right. Is it wrong for his dad to sue Jimmy?
Oh yeah,
get that
way around. Yeah. I knew what you meant, though.
I don't want to be sued by Jimmy. Deep pockets, just like dad.
Yeah.
I bet Jimmy's got a driveway.
This is a really difficult thing. Obviously, Jimmy Carr has... I'm going to call him Jimmy. I don't know him, but let's call him Jimmy. I think he has slightly crossed the line, perhaps, if this is upsetting his father to such an extent that he believes that it's defamation of character, and it's gone beyond the kind of the mother-in-law joke type of thing. But, you know, this really should be perhaps solved privately, because it gets a little bit tacky when it starts to go out into the open. So I don't think his father really should have done. But then I think if Jimmy's kind of like provoked it in that way, they could have dealt with this and handled it a bit better, I just think, more diplomatically.
It's a sorry business, isn't it?
It's very sorry business.
It reminds me of Thomas Markle and Meghan Markle.
Yeah.
And you know, lots of other high-profile examples, Britney Spears and her father. It's just terrible when the dirty laundry is washed in public.
Oh, it really is. I agree with Ingrid. It's just a shame that these kind of issues can't be resolved privately.
Yeah.
And if truth be told, I'm not particularly familiar with this case, but it sounds like Jimmy Carr's father has grown increasingly frustrated with...
Over 20 years, over 21 years.
According to sort of Jimmy's memoirs and some of his anecdotes, I think that he feels his father abandoned him when he was young, or didn't take responsibility for the upbringing of the family. And I think that Jimmy took guardianship of his younger brother as a result of that. So I think that's Jimmy's point of view. But then Dad may have his side of the story.
Well, then he should have said it. He's had a long time to actually put that out, hasn't he?
21 years, but Jimmy has done it privately, and it's not like his whole persona in his whole act on every single show he works on, he's all spaced around his father. It's not.
But it's come out in his book, and that's maybe the final straw.
We all write books about
something. Defamation of character.
After 21 years, though, come on.
Yeah.
Do you want your popcorn over there?
Sorry. Can I apologise? Sorry, I didn't show much etiquette there, did I?
No,
you're not.
Which links to our...
I hope you don't do that on airplanes.
Nice. This show is not just thrown together, let me tell you. Another story in the papers, and this is a very interesting one, and it's a person photographed with their bare feet in the air on an airplane. There it is. I mean, that's an amazing position. That's like... eat your heart out.
Won't get DVT that way, will you?
Yeah, too right. But it does beg the question, should travelling be peaceful? Frankly, should you follow an etiquette when it comes to being on an aeroplane?
Oh, yes. And on trains. I think on trains I can't bear it when people put their feet up on the seat opposite.
It's deeply improper.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
What about the comedian Larry David has a particular antipathy, Rakib, to sitting on a plane with somebody wearing shorts? Can't tolerate a man in shorts on an aeroplane. Is that a step too far?
I like a man in shorts. It depends what time.
See?
I'd rather that than that smelly foot on the air
Are you
conditioning
talking
system.
about Rakib's muscular legs or my knobbly knees?
Well, get them out. Let's have a look.
We'll
I think that used to be my catchphrase.
I think shorts is acceptable, but
Shorts,
that image is atrocious.
I mean, that's on the aircon unit as well.
It's absolutely terrible behaviour, it really is.
I remember Mike Perry saying that he couldn't bear men in shorts. Do you remember? We were once on the show. Do you remember? If they came in for the interview and they were wearing shorts, it was like, and he felt that they were shedding skin and all that sort of thing. It was hysterical.
I thought it was a biohazard.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. I think the worst thing on planes and trains is the feeling of someone's knees banging into you from behind the seat.
It's not just that.
And also the tray. This is why I love Ryanair, because Ryanair got rid of the trays.
Yes,
so you don't
brilliant.
have the tray clattering open and closed.
What do you have instead?
There's nothing. It's just basically
Your lap.
stare
You
into
normally
the
put something up. No, you not put it up in the armrest now.
See, look, Ingrid, she doesn't even know about Ryanair. This is how the other
No, I don't. Do you know what? I won't ever fly Ryanair. No, I know they do. And I have got such a vendetta against them because they really stitched me up big time when I really needed them. Anyway.
This is libel. We can't go there.
Well,
I won't even go there.
It's all about opinions.
But I do know frills.
Ingrid, Daniela, Rakib, and you for your company. We're back tomorrow at 9. Stick around because I'm doing headliners.
Looking ahead to tomorrow's weather, and the UK's looking dry and clear in the southeast at first on Sunday, but cloudier and windy further northwest. Let's take a look at the details. East and northeast Scotland will have some clear intervals to start the day, but further west it'll be cloudy and very windy with rain just beginning to arrive from the Atlantic. Northern Ireland will still be dry at this point, although here there'll be a lot of cloud around and a strengthening southerly wind. Cumbria will be fairly cloudy, but elsewhere across the north of England it'll be fine with clear spells, albeit pretty breezy. Patchy cloud and a brisk southerly breeze will affect North Wales. However, it'll be a dry start across the country with some bright spells, and the wind will prevent temperatures dipping too low. Across the Midlands, there'll be some more prolonged clear periods to start the day on Sunday, and as the wind will be a little bit lighter, patches of mist and localised frost are possible. Clear skies and light winds will be the order of the day for East Anglia, but here too the lack of cloud means it'll be a nippy start for many. These clear, fairly calm but rather chilly conditions will also be prevalent across southern counties of England, all courtesy of high pressure sitting nearby maintaining the settled weather. Through Sunday morning, England and Wales will be dry and bright, but wet and windy weather will sweep into much of the northwest. That's how the weather's shaping up during tomorrow morning.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Good evening, I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. Hundreds of people, including Irish political leaders, have attended a service in County Donegal to remember the victims of a petrol station explosion. Earlier this evening, Irish Prime Minister Micheál Martin visited the scene in the village of Creeslet, calling it a very sad day. 10 people were killed in yesterday's blast, including 2 teenagers, one named locally as Leona Harper, and a schoolgirl. Police in Ireland say the search operation has now ended, but they will continue with their investigation. Former Deputy Leader of the DUP, Lord Nigel Dodds, has called the incident horrendous.
Every one of us can relate to calling into a filling station or wanting to call in and get some groceries or a snack or something, and to be caught up in something like this is just horrendous. And when you hear those who've died include men, women, teenagers, a young child, it really is awful. Our hearts and prayers are with the bereaved of those who have lost their lives, and obviously hope and pray that those that have been injured make a swift recovery.
The former Trade Minister has said he's looking forward to clearing his name following allegations of inappropriate behaviour. Conor Burns was sacked from the government after a complaint of serious misconduct last week. He's reiterated he will cooperate fully with the investigation and that he's committed to public services.
The last 24 hours have been distressing and devastating. I still not had any information from the party of the nature of the complaint. I say, as I said in my statement, that I will cooperate fully with the party when they engage with me, and I look forward to clearing my name. I can't say anything more, I'm sorry, at this time.
Serial killer Peter Tobin has died at the age of 76 after becoming unwell in prison. He was taken to hospital from the HMP Edinburgh, where he was serving 3 life sentences for the rape and murder of Polish student Angelika Kluk and the murders of teenagers Vicky Hamilton and Dinah McNichol in 1991. Detectives questioned Tobin on his deathbed about other murders they believe he may have committed, but he refused to give any details. A large explosion has seriously damaged the only road and rail bridge linking the occupied Crimean Peninsula to Russia. Russian authorities say 3 people have died in the blast on the Kerch Bridge, which is a key supply route for the Kremlin's invasion of Ukraine. Moscow says the train line has now reopened. It's not yet clear if it was a deliberate attack from Ukraine. And only around 1 in 5 trains have been running today across Scotland, England and Wales. Members of the RMT union are staging their 8th strike this year in a long-running dispute over pay and conditions. Tomorrow, around half of the UK railway network will be closed, and those trains that are running will only operate from 7:30 in the morning until 6:30 in the evening. TV online and DAB Plus radio, this is GB News. Now it's over to something a little lighter, to Headliners with Mark Dolan.
My thanks to the brilliant Rhiannon Jones, who is trustworthy and newsworthy, but don't get used to it because this is Headliners. A first look at tomorrow's papers in the company of the brilliant journalist Toby Young and the marvellous comedian Nick Dixon. And let's have a look at tomorrow's front pages, and we start with the Mail on Sunday. They lead with sadistic Gove told stop plots or let in Starmer. Next up, we've got the Sunday Telegraph. Truss tells MPs unite or face disaster, stop the infighting grassroots members demand as Mordaunt rallies behind the PM. Putin plots revenge after bridge explosion, and ministers blame the Bank of England for soaring mortgage costs. The Observer next. Putin dealt a bitter blow as blast cripples key bridge to Crimea. Truss facing a rural rebellion is another story in The Observer. And this for her so-called anti-nature growth push. Concerns about Liz Truss's economic policies which could impact the environment. Sunday Mirror now. Peter Tobin's wife speaks out. I'm glad my serial killer ex is dead. Monster takes secrets of victims to grave. Sunday Times now. Bridge blast opens up Crimea. Explosion on landmark funded by Kremlin gives Ukraine hope it can retake occupied peninsula. PM set to cave in on benefits rise. There was speculation that universal credit would rise in line with average earnings, around 5%, but it will likely rise with inflation, which is double that at 10%. Sunday Express next. Heads down and charge. PM's strategy to revive the economy as Michael Gove, former Levelling Up secretary, is labelled a sadist who will put Labour in power. The Sun on Sunday, dancer Abby's heartbreak. Strictly star AJ ditched me for a model. Dancer Abby Quinnan has revealed her heartache after being dumped by Strictly star AJ Pritchard for a stunning new model. And last but not least, the Daily Star Sunday. It's strife, Jim, but not as we know it. Clean me up, Scotty. William Shatner lives up to his name and reveals tummy trouble on stage. William Shatner's comedy gig was nearly ruined by a captain's log. The Star Trek legend had to waddle off and swap his keks mid-act. And on that lavatorial note, those are your front pages. Nick Dixon, have you cleaned your pipes tonight?
That's a bizarre intro, Mark, to really what is an incredibly serious story. But this is presumably about Putin, who has dealt a bitter blow as blast cripples key bridge in Crimea, the Observer, as you just read out. And this is the Kerch Bridge. I'm sure you've all seen the images. It's been blown up. Some people are saying it's a suicide bomber. The other theory is, of course, it's these underwater drones that we may have given to Ukraine, is my understanding. And it makes it more likely that the Nord Stream 2 was done in a similar way. You have to ask that question. And it's just another escalation of this terrible war. And people are being quite flippant about it, bizarrely. I mean, the government of Ukraine tweeted "sick burn," which I find, it may be quite funny, but I think some people on Twitter don't really grasp the reality of a potential nuclear war. You see people say, no, we have to be tough. We can't back down. We have to go for it. Yeah, nuclear war is the only option. It's like, do people understand what is involved in such a thing? You know, I think there's a lack of reality going on, because this is another, I think, pretty disturbing escalation in the war.
Although a moral and strategic blow to the Russians, wouldn't you say, Toby?
Certainly, yes. It was a symbolic bridge because it connected Russia to Crimea, and it was also a way to supply Russia's armies in the Ukraine. So, yeah, I think it's a target the Ukrainians have been trying to destroy for a number of months and finally pulled it off in what looks like a very daring raid.
Indeed. So, we'll keep an eye on the situation in Ukraine. But moving on for now, let's have a look at the Sunday Telegraph. And Liz Truss is speaking out against the Tory infighting. Toby.
Yes, so looks like there's a fight back going on in tomorrow's papers from Team Liz. And in addition to branding Gove a sadist whom everyone should ignore, they're also saying that if the party doesn't unite behind the new leader, we'll be facing a monstrous coalition of Labour and the Scottish National Party. I think it's an echo of the coalition of chaos argument that David Cameron used in 2015, which I guess proved effective. He won a majority. But it's slightly less credible as a threat, because at the moment the threat isn't that if the Conservatives do any worse, we'll be faced with a coalition of Keir Starmer and Nicola Sturgeon. I mean, at the moment, given how far Labour's leading in the polls, it looks like Starmer will win an overall majority. So it won't be a monstrous coalition. It'll just be a monstrous Labour Party with a majority.
But do the Tories deserve power when they indulge in such a soap opera? So much politics behind the scenes, with a new Prime Minister who's tackling an economic crisis. We're navigating our way out of the pandemic. Surely she deserves a bit more loyalty and a bit more support. She went for the 45p top-rate tax cut, which most Tory backbenchers immediately disowned, even though it would either cost $2 billion or nothing, depending on which economist you ask. And now her plans to potentially raise universal credit in line with earnings rather than inflation has been thwarted too. How can she be a great Prime Minister if she's not allowed to pursue the policies upon which she was elected?
Well, I guess one of the difficulties is that she hasn't won a general election. She doesn't have much in the way of a mandate to embark on this radical new plan for growth. It's a bit of a departure with what's gone before. She hasn't done much to try and build bridges with people in Rishi Sunak's team. So, you know, she's now finding herself a bit isolated.
Tory backbenchers don't rate her in the main, do they? It was a minority of Tory MPs that backed her in the leadership.
Yes, that's right. They preferred Rishi Sunak. But do you think there's an analogy here to be made between Liz Truss and Vladimir Putin? You know, she's hunkering down in her bunker. She's surrounding herself with her most loyal lieutenant. She's identified an enemy at the gate, not Zelensky, but Michael Gove. And yet, you know, Gove has caused this terrible harm to her credibility by launching a kind of drone attack on the mini budget. That was the equivalent of the Kerch Bridge last Sunday. You know, and she's, dictators.
They need an enemy, don't they, a dictator?
I did see a picture of the other day, a massive table, with like a 10-foot table. Everyone else was at the other end. And she was totally isolated. And she made a great speech about the colonisation and the evil imperialists.
Can she ride a horse top